Inside the warm hum of Greg's office building with its sleek glass walls and the low murmur of busy professionals, he sat alone. His office was immaculate, lined with books about leadership, framed degrees, and a collection of meeting schedules magnetized to his filing cabinet. Yet at that moment, Greg felt like the walls were closing in, the weight of it all pressing down like a steel anchor strapped to his chest. It wasn't supposed to feel this way. 35 years old, a lucrative corporate career, a wife he adored, 2 bright kids at home, and even plans for a second home near the beach. By all appearances, Greg had built what others might consider a perfect life, but perfection wasn't what he felt. What he felt was exhaustion, deep, unshakable, soul-depleting exhaustion that was starting to seep into every corner of his well-constructed image. Greg pinched the bridge of his nose and glanced at the clock. 9:17 p.m., another late night surrounded by files and glowing screens. A text from his wife Rachel blinked on his phone. "Kid's asleep, you okay? Don't work too late. Love you." He stared at the text for a long moment but didn't reply. A lump formed in his throat. Even responding felt like too much. Instead, he tossed his phone on the desk and leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the ceiling. What was it all for? Why couldn't he shake this heaviness, the kind that made getting out of bed every morning feel like conquering a mountain? For months, he'd brushed it off. Stress from work, he told himself. You're just tired. Push through it. You're a man. You're supposed to handle it. But deep down, Greg knew it wasn't just the job. This was something quieter, something heavier, something that had been growing in him for years. He just didn't know what to call it, or if he even should. After all, who would he tell? What would he say? "Hey, I don't feel like myself anymore," he imagined saying to a friend at their weekly basketball game. The thought alone made him cringe. No one wanted to hear that. Men didn't talk about things like this. They pressed forward, found solutions, provided. That's what his dad always told him anyway. Keep your head down and don't complain. The world doesn't owe you comfort. Sharp the next morning, Greg was back at his desk, hiding his sleepless night behind a perfectly tailored suit and practiced smile. Meetings, calls, decisions. He moved mechanically through the day, robotic but pleasing, delivering everything his team expected and more. Yet the gnawing emptiness remained. It wasn't until Wednesday that something unexpected happened. During a routine meeting with his colleague and occasional confidant Mike, Greg caught himself zoning out, staring at his cup of coffee instead of listening to budget updates.
"You all right, man?" "Yeah, I'm fine."
But his voice sounded hollow, even to himself.
"Doesn't really look like it. You look tired."
This wasn't the kind of thing they usually talked about. They stuck to safe subjects, sports, work grumbles, the latest action movies. But something about Mike's expression gave him pause. There was no judgment there, no teasing or expectations, just concern. "I guess I've just been off," Greg finally admitted after a long pause. The words felt heavy coming out, like they'd been trapped inside for too long. "I don't know what's wrong. Just haven't been feeling like myself lately." It was the vaguest thing he could have said, yet it felt monumental. Bigger than all the executive decisions he'd made combined. For the briefest moment, he thought Mike might laugh it off, tell him to man up or slap him on the back with a half-hearted, "You're good, dude." But Mike didn't. Instead, Mike leaned back in his chair and let out a soft sigh. "Yeah, I've been there," he said quietly. "Actually, I'm kind of there right now." Greg blinked, caught completely off guard. "Wait." Mike nodded, fiddling with the pen on the desk. His usual confident, easygoing demeanor seemed softer, more vulnerable. "Yeah, I went through it bad last year. Didn't tell anyone at first because, it felt embarrassing, like I should have been able to handle it or something. But eventually, it got bad enough that I started seeing a counselor. Honestly, best decision I ever made. Turns out, trying to carry everything alone isn't exactly the best survival strategy." Greg sat back, stunned into silence. Mike, one of the most composed, seemingly unshakable guys he knew, had been struggling too, and he'd actually gotten help, was talking about it.
"You're serious?"
"Dead serious," Mike replied with a small grin. "Look, man, we all act like we're superheroes because that's what the world expects of us, carrying everything, being strong, not letting anyone see a crack in the armor. But that doesn't mean it's realistic. I thought asking for help would make me seem weak, but all it did was make me feel human again." Greg was quiet for a long moment, his thoughts spiraling. He wanted to believe Mike was right, but years of ingrained stoicism held him back. Still, deep down, a part of him wondered if he could feel that too, human again. That night, after another silent dinner where Rachel gave him worried glances, he sat in his car outside their house and Googled "counselors near me." His hand hovered over the screen, hesitant, nervous, but finally he pressed dial. It wasn't a fix-all, it wasn't instant relief. But as the days went by and Greg started opening up, first with the counselor, then with Rachel, he began to feel lighter, little by little. It was messy and uncomfortable, but it was progress. And for the first time in years, that dark weight he carried didn't seem quite so immovable. Men's mental health isn't about weakness. It's about strength through vulnerability, about recognizing that no one, no matter how put together they appear, should have to carry life's burdens alone. It's okay to talk. It's okay to not have all the answers. And most of all, it's okay to take the first step toward healing. Because real strength is found in facing what hurts and showing up even when it's hard. Just like Greg did. Just like Greg did.